chapter for the symbiotic movements of feminist and queer freedom, and women's freedom and reproductive health in general. So our journeys have always been connected when it comes to feminist and queer history. And of course, now we see with the joint evils of patriarchy and homophobia in Poland, growing in Poland, here in the UK as well, it's so important that we can celebrate this joint history and continue uniting to battle dominator culture. And I'm so looking forward to hear from Monica and our other friends in Poland about what's going on the front line, because, you know, obviously a massive support of Jarek and others from the Polish Rainbow family to see what we can do here. I'm of Polish heritage myself. My grandparents were both from, well, one from Krakow, one from, I'm not saying it, I'm not going to pronounce it right, Auschwitz. So it means a lot to me what's going on. And we made a film before about the rise of homophobia in the Law and Justice Party. And we went to one of the demonstrations, the Pride demonstrations in Gniezno, where I had a lot of fun shaking the hands of the fascists and homophobes, because obviously they were saying we're the downfall of civilization and that we're contagious. So we just shook everyone's hand as much as possible to spread the terrible disease of gayness. So I'm really excited to talk more about tonight and to pay tribute to our radical history on this incredible anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the Gay Liberation Front, and see what we can do. Hey, Ray. So I was going to read the last chapter, if that's all right. Any questions so far? No, do butt in anytime. So it's written both platforming Nettie and others from the Gay Liberation Front, and a whole series of activists like Danny, like Jarek, like Ray, who were involved in lots of creative, radical, feminist, queer, HIV, anti-racist movements. I've tried to, at the end of each paragraph, end of each chapter, summarize things into an action toolkit. So, as we all know, actions speak louder than words. So I've tried to crystallize what we can do at the end of each chapter. The final chapter comes just before that. I talk about the delegation to Russia that happened last year, to meet with activists on the ground there fighting the gay propaganda law, again, which was inspired by Thatcher's Section 28. And then I go into the kind of going back to Poland, which is in the last chapter. Anyway, without further ado, I will read on. Magda, what time have I got till?
Like I said at the beginning, it's fairly open-ended. I'd like to keep as much time for discussion as possible, but yeah, don't let it stop you if you have something important to say.
Oh, thank you. Is everyone comfortable? Yes, excellent. Okay. Liberation or slavery? Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. Martin Luther King Jr. I needed to get away to be able to think clearly, as this poignant quote reminds us about the best ways forward to build love in our community and obtain the justice we deserve. The situation in Chechnya was too close to the bone. I know I'm not getting the balance right between action and reflection, between the struggle and self-care, as the infrastructure of our growing global queer family becomes more connected and more people become more empowered to take the necessary action, because fewer is a lot of work. At the end of the year's final Gay Liberation Front meeting, I sat with Ashley, now a celebrated film director for his striking celebration of LGBT+ movements in the film Are You Proud? Reading the paper with excitement, the justice in an oppressive framework, rather than merely rights that should be a basic standard, can be fought for and won. The news that day announced that Pride in London could ban LGBT+ employees of arms manufacturers and fossil fuel companies. Ashley looked over, held my arm and said to me, Dan, remember, self-care is key. Allowing yourself to disconnect from the struggles and enjoy human connections in their fullest is an important part too. And it's often in these moments that the ideas blossom. Queers are seekers with a lot of stolen time to make up for. Who are we really behind the versions of ourselves we inhabit in order to survive? Can we tell a different story than the ones that imprison us? Can we ask questions that are often uncomfortable in the search to find a home? To answer any of these, firstly, you have to choose to acknowledge the search. When we are faced with understanding our human purpose, not just of what to eat for lunch or which word to use instead, it is a choice involving branches with roots in our hearts, where there are so many blossoming fruits to consider, and where you might find a patch of disease that needs culling. How does a person decide which is best when the roots go further than just one heart, one tree, one earth? On my own, I can't untangle the shimmering threads or retrace the invigorating roots, as the fruits are connected to more than I can conceive. Yet my heart stays grounded and everything still remains close. I think it's because I trust the people that teach our queer spirit of gay liberation, that together we all make up one collective spirit. What I've had to come to terms with, however, in this quest for purpose is pace and practice, for it is in the inner world of self-love and the outer world of community and respect that we fully flourish. Stepping back off the train, refreshed onto the London pavements I love so much, it's time to mince off to the rehearsal of the recreation of the first Pride in London for the 50th anniversary, which happened last year. On my way into the building, I catch Ted, another original founding member of the Gay Liberation Front, with a tear in his eye. Clutched in his hands, a gorgeous picture of a young beaming Ted wearing blue jeans and a tight t-shirt, smiling out of the world jumps out at me. What are they, Ted? I ask. I've actually bought 36 pictures to share with everyone. These are pictures of the first Gay Liberation Front against the age of consent restriction laws, which went from Hyde Park, along Oxford and Regent Street, down Haymarket to its rally in Trafalgar Square. The first public gay and lesbian march through the centre of London, presaging even the gay pride marches, pictures which have never been published anywhere. I've also got videos, photos, brochures, newspaper clippings, correspondence covering a range of campaigns and issues in my archive at home, starting in 1971. There's also video and press material on our work to help produce Why Civil Liberties, the campaign against Buju Banton's murderously homophobic dancehall record, Boom Bye Bye, against virulent homophobia in the media, such as the Voice newspaper, our support for gay black football hero Justin Fashanu, and so much more. You should come and have a look. If there were 100 hours in a day, Ted would devour them all. He has a mission to complete. Time ticks by, queer story is over, and the present moment is here. It is 5 minutes to 6 p.m. and the meeting is about to start. Ted, are you okay? I ask, noticing his hands shaking as he puts his photos down. No, not really, Dan. Actually, I'm really stressed. Earlier this week, my partner was attacked in his elderly home. He's living with dementia and can't quite grasp what's going on, but I know it's homophobic. I've been around the block. He answered quietly, clenching his jaw tightly. We had a long hug and the tension released. There isn't one LGBTQIA plus elderly home in the whole of London. Regularly, queers face attacks at the hands of homophobes in their elderly homes and often have to go back into the closet. The cruel irony of legends from the Gay Liberation Front like this, suffering homophobia at the end of their lives, is enough to make a skull smile. As we entered the room, Ted looked at me without saying any more words, and his warmth cracked something deep inside. He unlocked a vice I didn't know I had, a fear that sticks inside me that however many people you search for in this struggle for queer meaning, you are always alone. Grief can be powerful. We chuckled. A friendship was born. Behind every expressionless, tense face, there is a person. Behind every person, there is a story. Behind every story, there is tragedy. Behind tragedy, there are emotions. And behind emotions, there is love. That's the web Ted weaves and the light of the founders of Pride legacy leaves us all. I'm just going to fast forward to the last bit, which is the, actually, no. Are we okay? I've got like 2 pages left. Cool. We joined the group and everyone's excitedly sharing their favourite GLF stories to put into the 50th anniversary press release. In a cream t-shirt with a ravishing smile and a relentless spirit of mischief, I'm sure that Andrew, another founding member of the Gay Liberation Front, had fun in the communes he has told me about. With a glint in his eye, he scans the room and says, I think for my part, I'd say what we can see looking back is that it was a revolution. It's a revolution in the same sense there was a French Revolution, an American Revolution, you name them. The name GLF probably comes originally from the Vietnamese Liberation Front because of the impact of that during the Vietnam War. So this meets the problem of education. In schools and colleges, it should be taught that there was a gay revolution. You can call it the Stonewall Revolution, and that is a world event. Stuart Feather, from original member of the Gay Liberation Front, was next to take the baton. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is the Gay Liberation Front Street Theatre Group. We dressed up as nuns and stormed the Methodist Central Hall stage, doing the can-can and releasing mice amongst the crowds of the religious homophobic Festival of Light in 1971. People were utterly staggered. They couldn't believe their eyes, nuns exhibiting themselves in public. We at the GLF had campaigned to equalise the age of consent for all sexualities and had joined protests in support of abortion rights and full sexual freedom for all. 3 years later, the festival organisers were trying to recriminalise abortion and homosexuality, so we infiltrated, wreaked havoc, and defeated their inaugural rally in Westminster Methodist Central Hall. Their rally in Trafalgar Square and the major rally in Hyde Park afterwards was also disrupted. The whole movement collapsed. Nettie, who we've got here with us tonight, followed. I think what GLF means to all of us is absolutely life-changing. It changed us and it changes forever. Still today, the bond we feel between each other is extraordinary. The people in this room that I've known for nearly 50 years, we're really, really close now. I mean, how many people can say that? It's not just the people in this room, it's the other people in GLF and the younger activists as well. There's a real bond between us all. It's a pretty good time. As the clock on the wall ticks, the thinking is coming to a close. Everyone's excited. The speech has been drafted for the 50th anniversary celebration. Stuart stands tall. We are a few remaining activists from the original GLF who started Pride. In our culture, we invert the pink triangle to honour the memory of all those who died in the gas chambers of the Nazis and the Stalinists. And gay women wore, of course, the black triangle, Nettie yelled. Stuart smiled and continued, of course, we were all part of the first openly public demonstration by homosexuals in this country and present on the first Gay Pride March. Others are millennials, activists from ACT UP, who celebrated the achievements of GLF in 2015. And we all came together in 2016 to prepare and celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Pride of the partial decriminalisation of homosexuality. 1 month later in the spring sunshine, 100 of us released banners across the centre of Trafalgar Square. We stood by the lions under the banners stating, "We are the radical roots of Pride, GLF 50 years, come out." Ted stepped up to the mic, paused, and then opened up his lungs. "We are taking to Trafalgar Square to remember and reinvigorate the fires that fought back against centuries of oppression and seemingly overwhelming odds. I'm proud and inspired by the Stonewall's 50th, GLF's 50th, and Pride's 50th anniversaries. I want all these celebrations to be joyous, yet maintain a core of radicalism. This is necessary as a tribute to the queers who suffered victimization in the past or who fought for our freedoms, and that around the world, many queer people are still victims of archaic sexism and homophobia. Life for LGBT activists means combining domestic life with maintaining contact with other activists, plus preparing for the next event, publication, demonstration. Very few such activists ever stop their campaigning completely. We must always keep that awareness that there are powerful forces who will want to take our rights away. We must be ready to defend ourselves. The demonstration was focused, lively, radical, and productive. All the best action ingredients. Hyped on my way home, I decided to actually live a sexually charged queer life rather than always talking and writing about it. And so off I minced to Liverpool Street Station toilets, a notorious cruising spot. I sucked of a guy with a cherry tattoo on his hip. Now I knew where I wanted to put my tribute to Wilhelm Arondius, who for so long I had admired for saving thousands of people in Nazi Germany from being found and murdered, and possibly many of my own family too. So I had a pin-up of Arondius emblazoned on my hip lying on the beach. For all he did, he deserves to relax in the sunshine. The heat reminds us all how injustice ignites a flame in all of us, and to carry the torch without getting burnt out. It's over, the end, waved a tall, smiling middle-aged man as the toilet staff came in, and we all giggled and fled. But there was one more mission I felt called to do before Pride season truly began. It's not often you get the opportunity to go back to your roots from where your coming into Queer Story began. There was something big I had to do. I had been invited to Warsaw to connect with activists currently threatened by the rising prejudice from the Law and Justice Party and their LGBT+ free zones. These are municipalities across Poland that proclaim themselves to be free from LGBT ideology and actively refrain from promoting equal rights as part of a broader attack on the queer community. It also happened to be the 76th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, where resistance by Polish Jews under Nazi occupation on 16th May 1943 to the forced deportations from Warsaw to the Treblinka extermination camp. The revolt was crushed 4 weeks later. On the trip, I brought with me my nan's survival story because her last words jumped out at me. In Poland, there was generally no sympathy for the Jews. We who had false papers were more afraid of being recognized by the Poles than to be discovered by the Germans. Poles who lived so long with the Jews knew all the minutiae of the Jewish soul, and sometimes a sad, frightened facial expression was enough to give us away. But there were some noble and righteous Christians who helped Jews by hiding them at great risk to themselves. Some did it for money, some out of a deep humanity. And thus these Poles exonerated their nation. In my own small way, I paid tribute to them. Now it was my turn to pay tribute to her. The next day, I went to the Jewish archive in Warsaw in search of details of her life and where she lived. I found the house from where she saw the sky ablaze as the ghetto burned down. On the final day, in my own small way, I paid tribute to Michalina, that's her name, and everyone everywhere resisting bigotry. I went to the building and found the abandoned flats and kicked the wall in for that schmuck who messed with my nan and read this. We are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars, by Oscar Wilde. Fitting that I just found out that her birth surname was Sternlicht, or translate as starlight. And then in the kind of toolkit box, building loving community. Number 1, cultivate joy and hope. Number 2, remember that life is short. Number 3, live in awe and wonder. Number 4, cherish each human's unique revolutionary potential. Number 5, defy the stereotypes by refusing to be pigeonholed. And one more for luck, get a revolutionary homoerotic hip tattoo. Let it be known that homosexuals are not cowards, by Wilhelm Arondius, 22nd of August, 1894. He lived 1894 to 1st of July, 1943. And that's it. That's the end. Oh, thank you.
It was amazing, Dan. I'm not going to give any more of a comment because I want to move on. It's not my space to speak tonight. So next I would like to introduce Danny. Danny, the floor is yours. I'm not going to do much of an introduction apart from saying that you're a healthcare activist, specifically focusing on trans healthcare and also organizing cultural events and theatre. And yeah, floor is yours.
And all the rest. Hi everyone I know, and hi everyone I don't know. I've never used Zoom before and I'm finding this very bizarre, but here we go. I haven't read Dan's book yet because I haven't got my copy through, but just listening to, I know, but just listening to that reading that Dan did, I kind of I don't know, I think I was probably there at that meeting. And I just feel like so much of it is, I don't know, everything you just said about that building loving community, I'm really getting through from your reading and from the book. So it's going to be a beautiful reading experience for me. Magda said, I mostly focus my activism these days on healthcare, specifically sexual health. I'm part of Prepster, which I should put, I think it's, I'm going to try and put their, oh, I can't make out how to use the chat, but I'll put their website in the chat in a minute. Prepster has been going for about 5 or 6 years with the intention to roll out PrEP nationally, which happened finally in this country just a couple of months ago. So that was very exciting. But yeah, I focus a lot on trans healthcare. I'm a trans person myself, and in the UK, access to general healthcare, but trans-specific healthcare is absolutely appalling. I'm still on the waiting list for my first appointment with the Gender Identity Clinic after 3.5 years. Yeah, for real. Because I've got the gift of the gab and I'm well linked, I've been able to advocate for myself to get all the health interventions that I need. But for a lot of people, that waiting time is just spent waiting with no particular end in sight. And with the situation of healthcare at the moment, with all non-essential healthcare provisions being sort of cancelled and postponed indefinitely, the situation is worse than ever. So yeah, I've done a lot of work around sexual health and trans people because they're often left out quite a lot from the conversation around sexual health, particularly within the LGBTQ plus community, which focuses quite heavily on cis gay men, to be honest. A lot of trans people don't know how PrEP would work for them. They don't know about even like quite basic things like if they've had surgery to change their body, how that affects their sexual health. So I'm just sort of going around and sharing things like that. I mean, I'm talking about smear tests a lot and things like that. For someone with a beard to talk about smear tests is still quite revolutionary, apparently. So I like to do that whenever I can. Everyone with a beard, get a smear test. No, just me. So I do that. But this all started for me 5 years ago because of that man who I'm pointing at on the screen. I'm pointing at you, Dan. I'm pointing at you. It all started because of you. Because in October 2015, very randomly, I found myself pulled magnetically towards an ACT UP London meeting where I met you, Dan, and I met some of my best friends, some of the people who are now closest in my life. I met at that ACT UP event, which was called HIV Blind Date. It was crazy. It made absolutely no sense. At one point, everyone was wearing masks of David Cameron, and people were like throwing pigs at him. It was a lot. It was crazy, but something about the chaos and the passion in that event just drew me back. At that point in my life, I was still identifying as a straight, heteronormative woman. Not for very much longer. Within 2 weeks, I was gone. I'd arrived. And I've been arriving ever since. And yeah, the past 5 years has just been a whirlwind of ACT UP activism, doing incredible actions like just demonstrations, the road to PrEP, where everyone wore blue t-shirts and stood outside a sexual health clinic to demand PrEP. My personal favourite, when I got naked in the headquarters of Gilead, which is a big pharmaceutical firm, with the slogan "Pharma Greed Kills" written on our backs. What else have we done with that? So loads more HIV blind date events, which are really just super fun. They have got a little bit more clear, I think, in the past few years. They're not quite as chaotic as they were at the beginning. But yeah, they just sort of bring HIV awareness and information to people in a sort of a cabaret light-hearted setting, but with a real heart. I've met amazing people like David Stewart, who works at Dean Street's the head of Chemsex there. Will Nutland, who's the head of Prepster, who's just my absolute dreamboat. Got a massive crush on him. People like Dan, I say people who are now my best friends. And I've just been doing activism non-stop for the past 5 years, which is sort of brings me to something else that I want to talk about just now, which Dan touched on just before his reading, or maybe just at the beginning of it, the idea of radical rest. So I've got, I hope you can all see what's on this postcard, it's naked boys, but I've written caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So says Audre Lorde, who's obviously an incredible Black lesbian activist, sadly no longer with us. But yeah, for the past few months, pretty much since lockdown, and even a little bit before lockdown, I've been doing absolutely nothing. I've been doing no activism at all. I've just been like lying down and reading books and making really good food and looking at picture postcards of naked boys from the 1880s, and generally just having a really chilled, relaxed time, because if there's one thing that the past 5 years has taught me, it's that activism is draining, and not just because of the work itself, because of course if you're working full-time in any sort of job, you're using energy, but because of the entrenchment of the oppressions that you're dealing with. Going back to that original Gay Liberation Front ideal of all oppression being linked, I think once you realize that, and once you see that in action, which I certainly see of my own intersections as a trans person, as a Jew, as someone who's unemployed, as someone with mental health problems, as all these different intersections that I have, it does start to feel a little bit overwhelming at times. And without taking pauses for that radical rest, for that political warfare that comes from self-preservation and self-preparation, you can't give what you need to give, because you're no good to the cause if you're overexhausted and burnt out, or even worse. So yeah, I suppose that's kind of what I want to close on. I don't know how much time I'm supposed to have spent talking. Is just the idea that activism is so much a part of who I am now, because every time I walk out in the street, people shout faggot at me and I go, thanks, darling. But you know what I mean? Like every time I walk in the street, people politicize my presence. And I think, yeah, that radical rest has become as much a part of my activism as the demonstrations, getting naked in Gilead, HIV blind date, and all the other stuff that I've done over the past 5 years. So yes, all oppressions are linked, and sometimes we need to rest from all of them. That's me.
Thank you so much, Danny. That was beautiful. The combination of activism and self-care. Yeah. I think everybody can relate to this these days in lockdown. Okay. So next up, I'm very excited to introduce Monika from Poland. Monika is an LGBT plus activist in Szczecin and the president of Lambda Szczecin. And yes, Monika, welcome. The floor is yours. You have to unmute yourself. Monika, you have to unmute yourself. Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Sorry. Thank you so much for inviting me. Live in the city of Szczecin, which is very close to German border and only 2 hours ride from Berlin. So on the west of Poland, which is much more liberal than east. My topic today will be situation of LGBT people in Poland, which is quite complicated now. But maybe I will start from short overview what was happening during the last 5 years. Since this right-wing populists, the party called Law and Justice, came to power. Well, the situation before wasn't that easy because we didn't even have here hate crime protection. We do not have reasonable transition procedure. We do not have even registered partnership. But this governments which were before were like, we don't care about you, there are bigger problems in this country, and they were just neglecting LGBT plus people. But the new government, this Catholic right-wing populists, very, very strongly connected to Catholic Church, they started their policy of making our life harder. And we were so pissed off by this, like the small things, like Minister of Inner Affairs saying on public TV that Pride Parade is a festival of perverts and such stuff, that maybe it was the moment of real awakeness of LGBT plus movement in Poland. Because earlier on, it wasn't that full of energy and full of emotions like it is now. The Pride Parades were held only in the 6 biggest cities of Poland. And at the end of 2017, the smaller cities started to organize their own parades. And Szczecin, my city, was one of them. I re-established NGO called Lambda, and we organized First Pride, which was in 2018. And last year, 2019, in the whole Poland, there were 30 prides. So it grew in 2 years from 6 to 30, and it shows how much angry we are, because it's the situation now is really really ridiculous. And in Poland we had like 2 years in a row when we have election. First it was local governments, then European Parliament, then Polish Parliament, and now we have presidential election. And before this first election in last year, before European Parliament election, the ruling party launched campaign based on hatred to LGBT plus people. So they started to say that we are the threat, that we are going to sexualize children. I do not really know what this term means. They were saying like LGBT organizations are going to force sexual education in schools and preschool education as well, which means, and it's a quotation, teaching children how to masturbate at the age of 4 and teaching them how to consent sex in the age of 8. So they are saying that we are pedophiles and this is what we want. And it worked somehow because in our NGOs we notice that the crimes based on hate are much more frequent than before. We do not have any official statistics from police because the law in Poland does not recognize the crime based on homophobia, transphobia, biphobia as a crime, as a hate crime, but just regular crime. And they're not obliged to make a register of it. But we know that because of in our environments, we hear about the things that are happening from, you know, verbal verbal attacks in public places like tram or bus or street or neighborhood or school, to abuse in families, and also the attacks on pride parades are, especially in the eastern cities, are very violent. Probably you have heard of Białystok. It happened in the summer last year, when 3,000 thugs, hooligans, Nazis, neo-Nazis, and Catholic activists, ranging from age of 15 to 60, attacked the Pride. I was there as well. They were throwing stones, they were throwing firecrackers. They tried to, you know, break police line, which was protecting us, and attack people directly. And the worst, it was after the Pride, when all the participants tried to get back home or to train station or to car. My group was attacked in a side street with a baseball bat, and we saved lives because I stepped forward in front of the boys and I just spread my arms and said, if you want, I can hug you. And this guy was so chill, he just started cursing and spitting on our faces, but he didn't hit. But to hit again, to try to hit again, then random police car appeared from behind the corner that saved us. So it wasn't only one dangerous situation, of course, because in Lublin, a married couple brought a homemade bomb to exploding on us. They were also caught by the police minutes before the Pride started. And they were sentenced only to 1 year in prison, which is like for plotting terrorist acts. It's, well, I don't think it's a punishment or anything. And they will be released from prison before the next Pride takes place so they can do it again. Well, and of course, this first, which was made toward us, which was made by the mayor of Warsaw, who is candidate for president of Poland now. He made a charter of LGBT rights in Warsaw, like actively protecting and helping LGBT community. And as a reaction to this, a lot of municipalities, as we heard before, proclaimed themselves to be LGBT-free zones, mostly in the east and south of Poland. So 1/3 of Poland's territory and population is now living in LGBT-free zones, ideology-free, but this is something that does not exist. There's not such an ideology. They're living people. In Białystok, in Lublin, in Częstochowa, in Gniezno, even in my Szczecin, it was not ideology which was discussing with another ideology, but a live human who was attacking a live human. So this is the background of our situation now. and now everybody's waiting for the next weekend when the new president is going to be elected. We all hope for Trzaskowski to combat Duda, the one who already is a president and who said recently that LGBT is not people, it's an ideology. And his mates from his party, many of them repeated this, and also one of ministers coming from my city, he wrote on his Twitter that without LGBT, Poland is much more beautiful. And it all happened in the month of Pride, in Pride Month. So we made a protest on which we were wearing pink triangles, wanting to recall the history of Holocaust, that it started from the small things. It started from telling that someone is a disease or a parasite, then making separate places to sit, to shop, to move to, in the streets. And then it was a ban of working, and then it ended up in Auschwitz. So we are, and you know, nobody expected that it's going to end that way when it started. That's why we recall the history, because nobody knew at the beginning of rule of this party that they will go so far to dehumanize 2 million of their own citizens, to tell that we are not people. And also these words do not, because politicians and priests as well, they also say that we are, you know, rainbow plague or disease or worse than COVID-19. And these words, they have effect on lives of people, especially on the relationships in the families. And they are weakening a lot of sensitive individuals. Last week we learned that on the first day of June, which is Children's Day in Poland, a boy from Warsaw, from a city of Malbork, committed suicide because he couldn't bear the hatred around. He hanged himself on the tree in the garden, despite his mother was always with him and supporting him, but everywhere, like faggot in the shop, in the street, or get the fuck out from my shop, or the words from president, or words from Archbishop of city of Krakow. They were hurting him, and he was talking about this with his mom. He tried suicide before twice, and he succeeded finally on the first day of June. I will show you the picture of him. His name was Michael. Now, I'm not sure if I'm able to do this, but I will try by sharing screen. No, I think it's not possible. Or I don't know how to do it. I will send you the link to the press article where you can find the picture of Michael. and run his history through Google Translate to get to know more. Well, this is not only one loss we had recently, earlier, my friend Milo, a trans non-binary person, jumped out from the bridge in Warsaw because she couldn't stand any longer this very humiliating procedure of transition, which is in Poland now, that you need to go to a psychologist for 2 years and talk about how much you feel another gender than assigned at birth. And there are so few psychologists who understand that. And she was more and more depressed after each visit, and after the one, she just came to the bridge and wrote "I'm sorry" on her Facebook and jumped out. So we lost Milo, we lost Victor, who was 15 years old and jumped under the train of Underground Railway in Warsaw. And those are only few examples of how many of us are paying the biggest price for what they are doing, and they are doing it mostly for political reasons, for integrating their own supporters, because there is nothing much more powerful than fear. So the politicians and church make people be afraid of LGBT people to get more votes, and they have bloods on their hands. Well, this is Poland in 2020. So thank you so much, dear friends from the civilized world, that you do care about this far east, and that our voice can be heard in Europe. We are not losing hope, of course. Yeah, let's imagine that 50 years ago in UK, homosexuality was a crime. Now there are marriages, and we hope we will get to the same point, but I hope not in 50 years, that it's going to get not so much time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica. That was so powerful. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions afterwards. We just have one more speaker, Jarek. Jarek and I, we met outside the Polish embassy.
We all meet outside Polish embassy. There's always a protest, right?
We used to be regulars there, but unfortunately not since lockdown. Hopefully soon again. Jarek, the floor is yours.
So, where do I begin? I mean, I just want to thank Dan for the book, thank Dani for her contribution, but I really, really want to send my love to Monica. As a Polish person myself who ran away from, I mean, I didn't run. I left Poland because I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to wait until Poland accepts me as I am. I wanted to live my life, freely, and hopefully, it's. I was listening to this. I was listening to your contribution, Monica, and I was thinking. You said it so bravely, yet we can see in your face, and when I speak to other activists, in your faces, you guys just there is this tension there, because inside you must be bleeding, inside you must be, there is in your voice there is a cry for why do I need to tell people to stop killing us? Why do we need to lose? We lost Michał, we lost Dominic a few years ago, we lost Milo, and there is a fourth person, I forgot the name, but within the last few years, we've lost, that's what we know of. We know officially that we've lost at least 4 amazing teenage, beautiful queer people who their only fault was that they were queer, they were kind, lovely, human beings who couldn't deal with what was happening to them, couldn't deal with the hatred. And I remember when I was in high school, kids would put bricks into my backpack. They would throw away all like my backpack through the window. They would spill drinks or food on my notebooks, and I persevered on the outside because I didn't want to give them satisfaction that I'm crying. I didn't want to give them that satisfaction that they touched me. But then many times, and I didn't really say it to anyone apart from my mom, I sat on the edge of the windowsill on the 6th floor of my mom's apartment thinking, maybe that's it. Maybe it's easier on the other side. Maybe once we cross that rainbow bridge, it will all be over. But it wasn't. I mean, I didn't do it. I was thinking there must be at least one reason for me to carry on. I remember in 2001, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2001, with the setup of the campaign against homophobia in Poland, I was still in high school, but I was like, okay, maybe in a few years, with campaigning, with very gentle campaigns on billboards, like let them see us, or I'm not sure you remember that campaign, Niech nas zobaczą. There was few couples, there was few gay couples or models who agreed to pretend to be gay couples very tastefully. They were holding hands on posters, and no outdoor advertising company wanted to put those posters on. The only gay bar I had in Poland when I was finally legally allowed to drink, we used to go to that old warehouse district when we had a door with a number on it. You had to knock on the door, the little window would open, and they would check if you look safe enough to let you in. And that door would let me into a completely different place. It was full of people who were, free and happy and kissing and dancing. There were concerts, there were events, there were one of the safest places I ever felt. And I realized, this is me, this is my culture, this is my, I'm not gonna change. I remember when I came out to my family, my mom was crying, but she was crying not because I was gay. She was crying because she couldn't bear the kind of life I was going to have back in Poland. She was thinking that people will hate me, people will make my life difficult, so I tried to, she tried to persuade me, please don't wear that pink t-shirt today. Please don't wear that, those tight jeans to school, you know, and I was like, I don't care. I've been in the closet for too long. I don't care. When I was organizing first pride marches in my hometown of Łódź or Lodz, I remember there was more police than us, but we still marched. So suddenly from that world of you know, and we didn't know if police is defending us from them or them from us. That was one thing which I was thinking, you know, do they just want to have like a sanitary cordon around us, like, you know, just, oh, let them march, but let not anyone see us. At some point I started writing a blog. The blog was kind of my, you know, it was anonymous, but whoever read it could figure it out. It was like my window to another world, you know. Probably, I mean, many of us probably don't remember what the blogs were, but before Facebook, you know, before all those, we had blogs and we had chats. They were like their niche gay websites in Poland, which had like chats you could hang out, or, you know, they were a bit cruisy, but, you know, that's a part of, you know, cruising is a part of culture. And I remember I met so many friends through those blogs because, you know, it's the famous quote from Clive Stape Lewis, when you think I'm not sure, I'm not going to quote it directly, but it means that you make a friend when you realize that someone is the same as you, like, you too? I thought it's just me. So I created those network of people I could safely travel to. I remember my first boyfriend, I disguised him as my school friend who lives in the suburbs, and he cannot always get back there because there is no buses or no trains left. So he would sleep over. And when I told my mom a few years later that was my first boyfriend, she was like, really? And I'm like, you didn't realize that those sleepovers were just a cover? So, and, you know, then when Poland joined European Union in 2005, I've decided, okay, let's go to London. I think we booked first or second flight to London with my boyfriend at the time. And we got here and I was like, wow, you have different kinds of gay bars. You know, like we had like one gay, one lesbian bar. I was like, guys, there's different kinds. So I wanted to make, you know, that probably that time I've decided I want to come here, I want to live here, I just need to get out. But I was lucky because a lot of young people in Poland are not as lucky. They can't afford traveling, they can't afford to leave, or they don't want to. They just want their country to love them. They just want their country, their communities to accept them as they are. You know, take me for what I am. Don't, you know, take me or leave me, but don't kill me. As a part, when I was still in Poland, I was studying sociology, and as a part of my studies, we put on an exhibition. Probably people from Poland would know that, but my hometown was very famous for a lot of anti-Semitic language as a part of fight between two sports clubs. And I was doing research, like how often the anti-Semitic slur would be interwoven would be mixed with homophobic slur, you know. And I did an exhibition. We took some pictures. We did an exhibition, and I remember we really wanted to reach out to those communities where they were seeing those writings on the wall every day. And when the kids would come, I would give them a tour, and they would be like, oh, we never realized that can be offensive. We never realized that this can hurt you. We were just joking. And I'm like, I was thinking, well, maybe for you it's a joke, but for me it's like you're nailing it's a nail in my heart. It's a knife in my stomach. It's something which makes me physically unwell. So when I'm looking at, when we think that in Poland homosexuality was decriminalized in 1920s, when Poland got independent, and yet, so Poland, I mean, Poland was pretty much very forward thinking back then. Women got votes, homosexuality was decriminalized. Then came the war, obviously, and things were flipped again. I mean, Dan gave us a little bit of an account of that. And then after the war, homosexuality, I think during communist times was not spoken about because it was the Western rotten idea. No one really cared. But one of the first major government anti-gay campaigns happened in the 80s. It was the famous Operation Hyacinth, or Akcja Hyacinth, which in Polish, when the Polish secret service, or Polish, the kind of Polish version of like a KGB, was collecting compromising materials on people to use them against them. If you won't be in line with the party, you will release the papers, will show your wife, show your children that you're actually gay. So in a way, what's happening right now is kind of another step in that, powerful white church-loving, men trying to organize our lives, trying to tell us what's right and what's wrong. There was a lovely, when we celebrated we did alternative pride, the official pride in London March didn't happen this year, but we did our own little pride march, which was actually amazing and huge and beautiful. Danny was there, Dan was there, and at the end there was, I'm not sure, Dan will probably tell me what his name was, but one of the original members of GLF sang this song about "Get your hands off my body," and that song spoke to me so beautifully, because that song was all about solidarity, liberation for all, not only for gay or lesbians or trans, but also about women, about abortion, about, and when I think about, like, Poland needs a song like this. Poland needs someone, all those politicians and church officials to, like, get the hands off my life, get the hands off my body. And to kind of, I've been talking forever, but to kind of wrap it up, I would like to go back to the book. When Dan first started writing, and he was like, "Oh, is it okay for you to be in the book?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, but what did I do to be in it? What have I done to be in that book?" And when I was reading that bit about myself, I realized how beautifully Dan writes about what compassion, with compassion and empathy, there is a history lesson to be learned from that book, but there is also love, compassion, solidarity, and self-care. So I think I'm just gonna end on that note. Like in Poland, I think you guys are going through a moment of change, and the monster, the homophobic, xenophobic misogynistic, woman-hating monster will be crying, will be biting back, will be fighting back. But the revolution is happening. If I hear that when I was leaving Poland, we had like 2 major pride marches, Warsaw, Krakow, maybe 3, maybe there was Poznan at the same time. Now we have 30 plus little community prides. Dan, when he was in Poland last time, he joined the gay pride in the city of Gniezno. You know, it's little in a town of Gniezno. You know, the little villages have their prides. You know, so you know, for the first time in history of Poland, we had a gay presidential candidate. His time wasn't there yet because maybe we have a bigger fish to fry right now to save the democracy, but he made it. He was elected to parliament. He was mayor of the major city in Poland. He's in European Parliament right now. So people are ready. It's just the politicians and government and church is not ready for us. But, you know, we're queer, we're here to stay. We will not live in fear. So, you know, to all my Polish friends, guys, if we who are here living comfortably can do something for you guys, never be afraid to ask. We're always here for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. That is the perfect note to end on. And I'm going to pause the recording now so that people can engage freely in the discussion.